Britain's first female prime minister and the person who served in 10 Downing Street in the 20th century, Margaret Thatcher, made her mark as an unswerving conservative. "This lady's not for turning," she said in a play on "The Lady's Not for Burning," and as for an unapologetic nationalist, asked to select her 3 most memorable speeches, she chose a 1988 speech in Bruges, setting out her views on the European community, a 1984 speech to a Conservative Party conference at Brighton following an IRA bomb attack, and a speech on May 26, 1982, to a Conservative women's conference in the early stages of the campaign to liberate the Falkland Islands after their invasion by Argentina, which long called them the Malvinas and considered them Argentine. That Falkland speech is the one reprinted almost in its entirety here because it best reflects the Thatcher style, modified Churchillian, resolute but not ringing, stubborn but sensible. Her concluding words are based on the final lines of Shakespeare's King John. In a series of measured and progressive steps over the past weeks, our forces have tightened their grip on the Falkland Islands. They have weakened and retaken South Georgia. Gradually, they have denied fresh supplies to the Argentine garrison. Finally, by the successful amphibious landing at San Carlos Bay in the early hours of Friday morning, they have placed themselves in a position to retake the islands and reverse the illegal Argentine invasion. By the skill of our pilots, our sailors, and those manning the Rapier missile batteries on shore, they have inflicted heavy losses on the Argentine Air Force. Over 50 fixed-wing aircraft have been destroyed. There have, of course, been tragic losses. You will have heard of the further attacks on our task force. HMS Coventry came under repeated air attack yesterday evening and later sank. One of our merchant marine ships, the Atlantic Conveyor, supporting the task force, was also damaged and had to be abandoned. We do not yet know the number of casualties, but our hearts go out to all those who had men in these ships. Despite these grievous losses, our resolve is not weakened. It was 8 weeks ago today that information reached us that the Argentine fleet was sailing towards the Falklands. 8,000 miles away. At that stage, there were only 2 ways of trying to stop it. Through President Reagan, whose appeal to Argentina was rebuffed, and the United Nations, whose plea was also rejected. There were those who said we should have accepted the Argentine invasion as a fait accompli. But whenever the rule of force, as distinct from the rule of law, is seen to succeed, the world moves a step closer to anarchy. The older generation in this country and generations before them have made sacrifices so that we could be a free society and belong to a community of nations which seeks to resolve disputes by civilized means. Today it falls to us to bear the same responsibility. What has happened since that day, 8 weeks ago, is a matter of history, the history of a nation which rose instinctively to the needs of the occasion. For decades, the people of those islands had enjoyed peace, with freedom, with justice, with democracy. That peace was shattered by a wanton act of armed aggression by Argentina in blatant violation of international law. And everything that has happened since has stemmed from that invasion by the military dictatorship of Argentina. We want that peace restored, but we want it with the same freedom, justice, and democracy that the islanders previously enjoyed. For 7 weeks, we sought a peaceful solution by diplomatic means, through the good offices of our close friend and ally, the United States, through the unremitting efforts of the Secretary General of the United Nations. We worked tirelessly for a peaceful solution, but when there is no response of substance from the other side, there comes a point when it is no longer possible to trust the good faith of those with whom one is negotiating. Playing for time is not working for a peaceful solution. Wasting time is not willing a peaceful solution. It is simply leaving the aggressor with the fruits of his aggression. It would be a betrayal of our fighting men and of the islanders if we continued merely to talk when talk alone was getting nowhere. And so, 7 weeks to the day after the invasion, we moved to recover by force what was taken from us by force. It cannot be said too often, we are the victims, they are the aggressors. As always, we came to military action reluctantly. Good.
I don't know very much about that conflict, do you? The Falkland Islands?
No. It was 135.
How do you write instinctively?
I read instinct and then IFL. I remember when it was in the newspapers, but the United States is always pro-England, so whatever they gave was always England's side. But if you look at the map, I guess the Falkland Islands are just as close to Argentina as they are to England.
Right.
I mean, in other words, thousands of miles away from both countries. But if you notice, they don't say anything about the population.
What do you mean?
I mean, the people who live at the Falkland Islands, it's all England and Argentina. What do they want?
Right.
So maybe the population is so small, comparatively speaking, that they don't pay attention to it. So my computer went out again. I don't know, I just pressed the wrong keys or something and it just goes out. So before we take the next one, let's see if we can get it up.